Welcome back to ZMS Esports Studio, your home for all things cycling and all things virtual racing. And today, my friends, you join us on this, our day of reckoning. That's right, the final stage of what has been an enthralling 4-part race series called Chase the Yellow from us here at ZMS Esports Studio. But speaking of racing, where are we racing today and where have we raced previously? Well, we have gone through a series of fantastic courses on Indy Velo's proprietary Velo Island, beginning with Base Camp, where we saw those very fierce climbs. Coastal Loop, which was the sprinter's paradise, a mostly flat course. And on Tuesday gone, the 5th of September, we had Locked and Loaded, which again saw brutal climbs come to the fore. But today, for September 7th, we do have the biggie, a 44.3 kilometer course called the Crossover Circuit. Mostly flat, but as you can see, if you look at that kind of long bar, the grey bar just above our map there, you can see that we have two very pinchy, very punchy climbs that come up throughout the course, beginning on the west coast of Velo Island, cutting through the center, and then we loop around from the east side of the island, coming back to the almost north center of the west to finish, so covering the entirety of the island today. We have 331 meters of cumulative climbing in that 44.3 kilometer total. So we're going to see a lot of opportunities for sprinters to show what they've got, a lot of opportunities for rolliers and climbers to show what they've got. So today's going to be an interesting day, and we're going to see scores settled, and we're going to see who wins out in the end, who becomes top of the pile. Speaking of, how are we running these races? Well, we have the pro side of the race and the sportive side of the race. The pro side of the race will see riders who have a license to race, whether that is global from UCI, national from something like the British Cycling Organisation in the UK, or provincial with the provinces here in Canada, for example. They will enter their national or federal provincial license number into the racing license entry form, as you can see here. But in order to compete in pro level, they will have to also have a set of power meter pedals or a crank arm power meter, a chainring power meter, as well as having the smart trainer. They will also have to provide a race day weigh-in, and all of that is to make sure that we don't have weight doping, which has been a problem on other virtual cycling platforms, and that we don't have any intentional number skewing, because those two sets of numbers can be comparable to each other and can be cross-referenced. The sportive side of the race, however, is going to be your general classification, ergo riders who do not have a license, and that will be perhaps the bigger part of today's race. But before we jump on over to today's race, why don't we take a look at the results as they stand so far. So in the pro side of the race, Josh Harris absolutely killed it in the last stage, and as a result he has taken the top spot, and he is sitting at a cumulative time, and that stage is 1 through 3 all inclusive of 2 hours, 1 minute and 23 seconds. Igor Kopse, who is 13 seconds and 900th of a second behind, 1 minute and 13 seconds and 900th of a second behind at 2 hours, 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Morten Feng of Norway is sitting at 2 hours, 3 minutes and 18 seconds, placing him 1 minute and 55 seconds behind Josh. And rounded out the top 4, Rasmus Felbauer is sitting at 2 hours, 22 minutes and 40 seconds, placing him 21 minutes and 17 seconds behind Josh. I'll cover what's going on with those other names there in a little, but let's look at the sportive, or the general classification. And we have Ludwig Karlberg, who is sitting at the top spot with that phenomenal finish line sprint that he provided us with in stage 3 there. So cumulative from stages 1 through 3 for a time of 2 hours, 7 minutes and 52 seconds. Deutschland's Sven Dreser is sitting at 2 hours, 9 minutes and 17 seconds, placing him 1 minute and 25 seconds behind Ludwig. We have Matthew Ladd, fellow Canadian. Really awesome to see a fellow Canuck in the top 5, sitting at a time of 2 hours, 10 minutes and 37 seconds for a differential behind Ludwig of 2 minutes 45 seconds. Chris the Zomanique is at 2 hours, 11 minutes and 33 seconds, 3 minutes and 41 behind Ludwig. And then rounded out the top 5, an Aeonian who has done some phenomenal racing, Ariala Verhaeren, at 2 hours, 12 minutes and 24 seconds for a differential of 4 minutes 31 seconds. But what about the women's only? Well, the aforementioned Ariala is taking the top spot for Aeonian with 2 hours, 12 minutes and 24 seconds. Fellow Aeonian Daniela Estrata is sitting at 2 hours, 12 and 32 for a differential of only 8 seconds. Vicky Whitelaw, again Aeonian, at 1 hour, 32 and 7 seconds. J.L. Wright, another Aeonian, 1 hour, 34 and 37. Rounding out the top 5 is M. Nyquist at 1 hour, 37 and 23. And I got through that just in time for us to jump on over to the start line, where we can see our riders beginning to clutch onto the hoods, ready to step up, lift themselves into the saddle, clip in that second foot, and begin to really push hard off of that start line. So we can see the field is dramatically less full on the pro side of the race, and that will bring me to a description of why you saw some names struck out on the pro side of the race. For the pro side of the race, all of our contenders have to compete in all 4 stages for their GC to be counted. And we are off, and it looks like we've got Morten Feng of Norway on the lead on the pro side of the race. There's a small breakaway on the front of the sportive side of the race, but a nice big peloton all bunched together to begin with. But with those fierce climbs coming up, will that peloton stay so utopian in its bunching? So who have we got here taking the lead? Is this Matthew Ladd, fellow Canadian, doing it for the true White North? Only a small breakaway here, and I would hasten to bet that sadly it might not last very long, but breaking 300 watts there with a nice low cadence. So go in for a high attention chainring, or to place that visually, one of the smaller cogs on the cassette in the big chainring, which would explain the big power numbers from a lower cadence. Around the 70 to 80 mark there is what we saw Matthew Ladd doing. So going for a nice endurance effort there, and this is certainly an endurance course today. So we are through our checkered arch, meaning that we have finished the lead-in, and we are now officially in the course. So 44.3 kilometers from here, the pro side of the race, we can see that Igor Kopse is beginning to pull up to the front here. But we've got Morten Feng still taking the lead on the front. Igor on cam there, live from Slovenia, doing some fantastic work there. Again, a very well-toned warrior of the wheels. At the peak of his game, I'm sure. So Morten Feng, as a fellow Scandinavian, is in the E-Cycle Club Denmark team, even though he is with, or from Norway I should say, but Rasmus Felberg, their teammate, is helping him begin to push forward. And we are joined today by the soaring Swede himself, Carl Axel Zander Persson, who is with Razio Racing in this league. I'm always really well humoured by the fact that we never see a base layer, we never see a jersey on Carl, because he's just putting so much ferocity through those crank arms that his body heat is at a level where he wants to be performing optimally by cutting all that nonsense out, just going with the bib shots. So on the Sportive side, we're staying nice and bunched together, although we are seeing some stretching of that peloton beginning to happen. Matthew Ladd still on the lead. He is being chased by Daniel Kerda of BHC, who we also saw do a very phenomenal slingshotted sprint effort with teammate who is just joining him here, Sven Tedesser, with the team BHC, Matthew Ladd with Coalition. Rob Halsell, who began the league so strong, or began the Chase the Yellow Tour really strong by being at the top of race 1, is beginning to pull up to the 4th place position here. Daniel Kerda there, we can see breaking 250 watts. So everyone's keeping a fairly good endurance effort here. And who is this? Tom Moss with Coalition, teammate to Matthew Ladd, pulling ahead there. Breaking 400 watts with a low cadence, so going for a very high tension gear, lower cadence, pulling through that endurance effort, pulling through the cadence there, more than pushing. So I'm sure he'll be feeling that in his quads for sure, feeling the burn, feeling the prize of the effort, if you will. Opening up quite a sizable breakaway for now, but knowing that those climbs are coming, will it last? Or is that maybe why Tom is pushing for such a breakaway right now, hoping to maintain a gap and a distance as we enter the foothills of those treacherous climbs ahead. And we're on board with Ariala right now, who we're following right now, who's been doing a phenomenal effort for Aeonian. And Aeonian are the women's league, or the women's team here in Chase the Yellow, and they are Daniela Estrata, Vicky Whitelaw, Ariala, who we just covered, Andrea Heinrich, Jamie Wright, Debbie Wimbler, Jennifer Mizak, and Berdine Driscoll. And again, I'm loving all the logo designs for all of the teams. Really on point, as the kids might say, logo design. So it looks like we have a duking out between Matthew Ladd, Daniel Kerda, and Sven Tedesser here. It looks like Tom Moss kind of paced back his effort there. Maybe just a bit of a sprint to draw the peloton forward, to soften some efforts in some of those quads. Out on course today. And we got Julian Andre here, pushing 250, holding very stable actually, really good form on how he's holding those watts nice and stable with a nice stable cadence. Oh, we're forming into almost a breakaway group and a chase group. If the riders at the back there don't manage to hold on to those rear wheels. But how are we getting on the pro side of the race? It's normally so fast that things change on a dime in the pro side of the race. Carl has actually pushed to the front. And I've actually seen that team name has now changed to E-Cycle Club Denmark. But Morten Feng, it looks like our Scandinavian contenders are duking it out for that pole position at the lead of the group here. We're still in our flats right now. As you can see, 0% gradient if you look at the top right window there in your screen as you view along with us. And you can see how so many of the contenders in the pro side of the race have clearly done training on their pace training. So that may even be wattage pacing, but more than likely cadence at effort pace training, because you can see how well they are sticking together, how well they're holding each other's rear wheels, and how well they're holding as a little bunchy there. With Rasmus Feldbau taking the lead. I guess that might be pronounced Rasmus Feldbale, if it's pronounced the Germanic way, but my apologies if I get any of that wrong. So we've got Carl here keeping nice and well paced back on the power. using the draft benefit to his advantage right now to save some of that all-important effort through the quads, keep the quads nice and massaged with a higher cadence than output, and keeping the cardio maybe a little bit held back, ready for the climb ahead. Ben Russell in their second place position with Wahoo Lakal. Speaking about Lakal, who here watches Chris Opie on YouTube? I love watching his videos where he takes us through not just road cycling, but mountain biking as well, and takes us through some of the intricacies of what it's like for the young athletes who are either looking for teams, being scouted for teams, or in teams currently. It's all great stuff. But on the sportive side, we are still being headed here by Matthew Ladd. He is the spearhead, if you will, of our peloton here. But Kai Retzel with Watt Fabric has really pushed up and is in that lead chase position behind Matthew Ladd. So it's interesting to see that Kai Retzel, who's been in the top 10 consistently, but a little bit further back, is pushing ahead. And who are Watt Fabric? Well, we've got Andre Patala, Jan Ola Koding, Kai Retzel, Ralf Berg, Reinhard Berkey, Tobias Astermann, and Carmen Krebs. And Kai Retzel now moving up on, let me figure out what that'd be, the left-hand side of Matthew Ladd here. Ludwig Karlberg, is that Ludwig? No, that's Daniel Kehrer coming in hot, pushing to the front here. But Ludwig right there on the right-hand side of Daniel, now pushing ahead, with Matthew Ladd not letting go of his fixed-on Terminator-like tunnel vision on Ludwig, knowing that his true fight today is with Ludwig. Daniel Kehrer for BHC currently on that lead as we begin the nice pinchy, punchy climb ahead, currently at 8%. And you can again follow along by looking at the bottom center of your screen. The downward gold arrowhead is where we currently are on both our map and elevation profile there. But if you look at the top right hand side of the screen, you can follow along with the active percentile that we are currently tackling. So beginning to even out, we are just in the foothills, but as we get through this trough into the peak, we'll begin to see that climbing really come out. Rasmus putting a little bit of a breakaway there on the pro side of the race. Carl chasing him down. Our Swedes are looking at sticking to each other's rear wheels. Our Scandinavians, my apologies. Our Danes, Swedes, and Norwegians, I should say. Igor there on the webcam, really good form. I mean, not surprising given that he is a UCI sanctioned champion. Getting out of the saddle is what we just saw as the webcam was just about to cut out there, to really push through the crank arms, standing on the cranks to really give that power that's needed to propel up this nice pinchy and punchy climb, breaking 400 watts there. And this is where we can see Igor's prominence as a rallier coming out in the climb here. Again, we're about to hit another trough before another peak here, as you can see by following along on the gold downward facing arrowhead on the elevation profile there. So our arch here is not denoting the end of the climb, it's denoting the end of one small introductory foothill into that climb that we can see ahead. And whoever designs these maps at Indy Velo knows how to bring true terror to any cyclist with the ferocity of these climbs. They are truly fierce. I mean, you feel amazing after you've taken them on and succeeded and come down the other side. But at the time, wowee, Morten Feng pushing 250, breaking into 300 watts here and above. But Ben Russell and Carl are currently duking it out on the front there. Looks like Josh is trying to take on the lead position as well. But Igor there, like a shark gliding through clear waters, we can just see him beginning to sail forward and begin to take that lead. So Ben Russell breaking 450, so Igor will be going way above that now. And Razio Racing have become the team to beat in this race series. But with Slovenia being such a mountainous country, would we expect anything less from a pro-Slovenian cyclist? Rasmus, maybe not so much of a rallier, maybe more of an endurance on the flats, maybe a bit more of a sprinter, beginning to lose the tail of the main group there. But let's see, let's not count our chickens before they've hatched. Let's wait and see what happens as we get into the descent. As we discovered on race 3, the descent, surprisingly enough, can change quite a few variables, as it can outdoors too. Now, on the sportive side of the race, just as I suspected and just as I alluded to, the very pinchy and punchy climb that we are going through, that we are enduring, has really stretched out the peloton here and stretched it out into very much small clustered groups. So I'm currently following Michael Frati here, putting in a nice consistent effort. A somewhat higher cadence for such a pinchy climb, so definitely in the small chain ring, in a larger gear, so doing very much a much more intelligent way of taking on climbs than I did on Monday's Monday Malarkey for WLVR, with commentary that was brought to you by Dave Morrison. But we're following Ludwig here, who certainly shot his way up that climb and is now attacking the downhill, not leaving anything to chance with that dynamic that can come into play with the various physics that go into the descent, both in the real world and in Indy Velo, the calculations in Indy Velo being based on those real world parameters. So that'll be things such as weight, such as the weight of your bike as well. And that will be, if you're spun out, for example, if you can't get into a high enough tension gear, then you won't be attacking those downhills, as we do have the real feel for smart trainers activated in today's race. But Sven Teresa in the second place position, chasing down Ludwig, chasing down the Swede. And again, as we discussed on Tuesday, there will actually be a braking penalty for downhills and relative flats into sharp corners if riders don't do correct pedaling tactics. Normally that would be coasting into a direct corner and pedaling out. And that will affect the real feel for smart trainers in game today. And what will be meant by that is that I can attest to it. I felt it on Monday's Monday Malarkey, where I just completely zoned out of the fact that there was a corner coming up. I went into tunnel vision, chasing the rear wheel ahead, and it does actually seize up your electronically controlled mag flywheel. So you actually feel it as well as it also braking harder and bleeding off some extra speed that you'd be able to actually enjoy if you just did the correct pedaling tactics. So we've got Ariella Verhaarden there, has come right to the front of that chase group as well, alongside Sven Teresa and Daniel Kehrer, looking to chase down Ludwig's rear wheel. He does have a sizable breakaway right now, and it might be difficult to chase, but speaking of a breakaway, we have a short breakaway with Igor here, and he's holding his own through the descent, really attacking the descent, and really showing us what he's got through that corner there. And he very much looks like he's in a place where he's kind of hurting, but he looks like he's having a hell of a lot of fun. and I'm quite envious. While I did do some training earlier, it is so fun racing. Josh Harris here taking the lead. So we're now back into our relative flat for quite a while now. And this is where endurance efforts are going to come back to the fore, and where the whole dynamic will change. So if our riders didn't get enough time to collect their cardio effort, make their breathing nice and deep again from being shallow through the climb, then they may suffer with what's ahead, because while a flat seems nice compared to a climb, coming out of a very strong climb like that into a flat, where actually the real dynamic with a flat is that it requires consistent effort, your cardio effort will stay relatively high, and you'll begin to feel that suffering maybe a little bit more the more time goes on. And we're following Carl here as he's looking to chase that main pack ahead there, looking to latch onto Ben Russell's rear wheel, get some of that draft benefit and really push ahead. Doing some very solid effort here, breaking 370 almost on the watts, a mid-range cadence there. So in a mid-sized gear it would appear in the big chainring. And Morten Feng on the lead right now, but Igor Kopse is holding in right on that rear left there, and I am almost certain he's pacing, ready for the right moment to surge, and he has found the moment. But we can see there that Josh Harris isn't going to let go of that rear wheel. He has the tunnel vision that I spoke about, locked on to that rear wheel of Igor, and he is closing that gap fast. 800 watts there we just saw at the peak of that surge from Igor, in a mid-range cadence again, so in a fairly high tension gear, really showing us the true definition of an endurance effort on flat. Ben Russell and Morten Feng closing that gap as well, while admittedly Josh and Igor are kind of pacing back their effort. And I have a feeling that we're going to see multiple attacks across the flats here, as different contenders on the pro side of the race are going to try to soften the effort of their contenders there, lure their contenders into bringing their cardio effort up, to hardening that lactic acid in their quads, and that will go on and on. But we have our team here, Matthew Ladd, Sven Teresa, beginning to close that gap with Ludwig, and perhaps even pass, as Sven Teresa is doing right now, looking to have his own breakaway, his own gap. But that tunnel vision has taken over Ludwig as well, who's been lured into this kind of sprint chase here with BHC. Matthew Ladd in that lead chase position in the chase group here, alongside Daniela Estrada from Romania, currently leading that push ahead with fellow teammate Ariala. Matthew taking his turn on the lead right now. A small breakaway, but he seems to be trying to grow that. And we'll have to see how that plays as we continue through the flats here. Again, the flats look deceptively easy, but when you're in a race like this, constant effort, constant endurance effort through the crank arms is required, really pulling through the chain tension. And Ben Russell has got a breakaway lead here. We missed something on the pro side of the race, and I'm wondering how he got such a sizable breakaway so fast. Holding 300 watts there at a 60, so doing a true endurance effort, really high tension gear there. Again, pulling up on that nice smooth circle of the cadence rhythm. pulling up through the pedal stroke. I'm loving those colors, by the way. Nice vibrant contrasting colors on both the bike and the kit. Fantastic stuff. Holding 40 kilometers per hour right now, and we do have 30 kilometers remaining. All of this fantastic vision mixing, which is all the camera work and all the cutting between all the graphics and stuff like that, today is brought to you by Damon from ZMS Esports Studio, live on the south coast of England. And me personally, I'm coming to you live from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada. And we've got our main chase group here on the pro side of the race. Looks like Morten Feng is beginning to break away from Josh and Igor just behind. Ben Russell still surging on the front. And we're currently following Julian Andre on the Sportive side of the race in one of our small chase groups here. Daniel Kerr on the lead. And it looks like Julian's holding around 150, so in a nice paced effort right now, which is a good place to be in. And looks like around about a zone 3 or zone 4 heart rate there. Again, that can be entirely subjective to age and to height, as well as physical athletic ability. It's not all based on athletic ability, so that heart rate range changes dramatically. When I first started cycling, road cycling and racing about 4 or 5 years ago now, just leaving my 20s and starting my I guess it's in my early 30s already, my heart rate, maximal heart rate, was 195. Today, several years on, it is 185. So it does change every decade as you age. Matthew Ladd has now taken his turn lead in the front there, a bit of a breakaway, but closing that breakaway is Sven Teresa. Ariella Verhaarden is doing really well. She's looking at also patching the gap here, as we can see her beginning to drift away from that main chase group there to close the gap with both Matthew and Sven ahead. I'm loving the Aeonian colours on the bike there. Great stuff. So 250 watts holding 90, so doing a nice smooth effort that's going to massage those quads and keep the lactic acid nice and soft rather than going hard and seizing up the quads. Great work there. And while we're midway between our two peaks, our two climbs there, we do have another race series coming up, and this is linked into a new development at Indy Velo, and that is Keirin. And Keirin is a Japanese track cycling discipline where a motorcycle will lead out. Sometimes it is another cyclist, but normally a motorcycle. And you have to leave the pen by not passing the Keirin. And you can finish by passing, but the challenge is to, of course, finish the fastest and to keep the draft benefit with the Keirin to slingshot you forward. And that will be called Chase the Pace here on ZMS Esports Studio, and of course right here on the virtual cycling platform known as Indy Velo. So that's Keirin. And you can also program in the start speed of your Keirin and the finish speed, so you don't have to go with the Olympic set disciplines, which I believe are 31 kilometers and 50, I believe. But here you can do difference for the starting speed and the end speed of your Keirin, and you can set up all other variables as well, including the weather, because we are on the Forest Velodrome, which is an outdoor velodrome in Indy Velo, and you can even switch off the wind so that you can make it almost exactly like being in the indoor velodrome, so that you can do your velodrome pace training. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for updates. And how can you stay tuned? Well, you can find either Chase the Yellow or ZMS Esports Studio on Facebook, and that's a good way to stay updated. You can also watch any of our broadcasts live, including the one you're watching right now, by, again, looking for Chase the Yellow or ZMS Esports Studio on Facebook, by searching ZMS Livestream on YouTube, or by downloading the ESTV app for any smart device and then going into the app and searching either ZMS Esports Studio, Chase the Yellow, or Indie Velo. So Ben Russell is just soaring away, just flying with it on the pro side of the race. His breakaway is very impressive right now, but there is that nice, sharp, very painful climb coming. Will this level the playing field? More importantly, will the descent over the Zenith level that playing field? On the Sportive side, we've got Matthew Ladd, who is now leading a quite sizable breakaway group. That whole chase group looks like they've caught on to the rear wheel of Matthew, and everybody is enjoying that nice smooth drop in it. Ariella in that third place position. She has been consistently moving up the league table in Chase the Yellow, and that's been phenomenal to see. Ludwig Kohlberg is a little bit further back right now, maybe pacing, maybe holding his effort back, waiting for a big attack, knowing that that climb is coming up, knowing that he's a relier. Also, Matthew, if you see this, please do comment and let us know what part of Canada you are from. Daniel Kerr staying very consistent and really holding on to that left-hand side of Matthew Ladd, not letting anything to chance and waiting for the right moment, knowing that the climb's coming up, maybe to punch it through that climb, or maybe better yet to punch it through the descent, maybe get into a high enough tension gear and attack that descent. But time will tell as we creep ever closer to the looming shadow of the summit ahead. I hope you do like my dramatic verbiage. I hope that lends some edge of the seat tension to these races. Anyway, let's see how things are getting on the pro side of the race. So Ben Russell still just flying, serenely unobstructed by other riders, but 55 seconds behind is that chase group, and 55 seconds will shrink to almost nothing as we get into a very steep climb like the one that lies ahead. So we're currently cutting through the center of the island, of Velo Island here on Indie Velo, before we'll come through and down the east coast. It looks like Josh Harris was leading the chase group here, or is leading? Yeah, is leading currently with Igor Kopse in hot pursuit. And Montfeng and Carl has managed to latch on to that chase group. Great work, Carl. That would have taken some phenomenal endurance effort, and you did it. That's great stuff. Again, every time we cut to the webcam of Igor, I'm always very impressed by just how incredible his form is on the bike. Great stuff. Igor here looking at pushing the chase group along to ebb away at some of those seconds that remain, with as distance between them and Russell ahead. So we've covered half of our current distance, so 44.3 kilometer, with half of that distance remaining, and it looks like we are closing in on the halfway point. So it is a single lap today. The rest of our courses have been 2-lappers, but this is such a long course that it is just a single lap. And our chase group there beginning to ebb away at some seconds, or at least they're holding steady at 55 seconds. Sadly, Rasmus has fallen behind by a little way there. It looks like he's a further 1 minute and 30 seconds behind, or 40 seconds. But it looks like our group is currently moving at 44 kilometers an hour. Keeping a very good, very impressive speed. But what are our speeds like on the Sportive side of the race? Well, we've got Matthew Ladd there punching 39 kilometers an hour, holding on steady at the front with that awesome neon purple kit and that kind of grape coloured bike. Great stuff, with Daniel Kerder still sticking to Matthew Ladd. Sven Teresa just on Daniel Kerder's rear wheel there. And our main chase group is being led by Tom Moss, who we saw earlier push right to the front. It looks like that chase group is about 1:30 behind. But again, will that climb shorten that draw distance? Or will it serve only to stretch out our grouping even further? So, and as a reminder of where we are taking on that crossover circuit today, 44.3 kilometers per hour, kilometer course, sorry. And yeah, so we're currently coming down that east coast, so we're pushing or getting to the top of the center. So we've got some nice bunching going on right now, but that climb is looming ever closer. You can see, again, if you look at the downward facing golden arrowhead, you can see that we're looming ever closer to the second of two quite ferocious climbs. Ben Russell still managing to hold that breakaway fairly consistently there. If anything, it looks like he's opened up a larger differential on the main chase group there. He's actually grown that by just about 20 seconds to 1:15. But that may change with this climb. Again, it's such a big distance that there could almost be showboating from Ben at this point. But it may be too early for that, as taking it easy on those crank arms might allow that distance to be eaten up, that differential to be consumed. And it looks like our main breakaway group on the Sportive side of the race is holding fairly consistently, staying nice and well packed in that bunch. Matthew Ladd is opening up a couple of bicycle lengths of distance there between himself and Sven Teresa. And Daniel Kerder pushing to the front right now. So I've got a feeling that if, as fellow Rolliers, they can all hold on to each other's rear wheel going through the climb, that we're truly going to see a fight between those three for the pole position as they crack the finish line. Adiala Verhanen staying nice and strong near the front of the pack there as well, as is fellow teammate Daniela Estrada. So So Kai Retzel, it appears, has taken the lead on that main chase group. And you can also follow along at the distance we have remaining by looking at the gold bordered bar that we have there about 1/3 in from the left. And you can see there that next to the checkered flag you have the 18.6 kilometers. That is our distance remaining, and that will count down to 0. As well as you can see the current speed of our lead contender, or the contender that we are currently following is maybe how I should phrase that. And then we have the time cumulative that is counted up so far. So we're 39 minutes about into this race with 18 kilometers left. But looming, casting a shadow across us, is the mountain's peak just ahead of us. Ben Russell is flying his way towards that mountain. I'm not sure how envious I am of that. I would be delaying that. But I guess at some point you have to take on the climb. You can't ignore it. And again, serenely unobstructed by other riders, just soaring his way towards the very pinchy and punchy climb ahead, holding consistently above 300 watts at 60 cadence. So again, in a very high tension gear, pulling through an endurance effort. And again, I'm not sure how true this is, but I've heard that in terms of your maximal heart rate and the effort through the quads, yeah, it's going to impact your quads a little bit more doing an endurance effort pulling through the chain tension in those pedal strokes. But my understanding is it's a way to also put out the most transference of power at the lowest input, and therefore hold your cardio effort a little bit lower than it would otherwise peak at if you were doing fast feet and trying to push through fast feet. Kyle Parson there has actually pushed ahead of the main chase group and is looking to bridge that gap with Ben ahead. So we have a differential of 1 minute 22 right now. So he's pushed about 30 seconds ahead of that chase group. So phenomenal effort there on that chase by Kyle. And it really is anybody's game as we near the climb ahead. But as we do near that climb ahead, let's take a look at the Sportive side of the race and see how that main breakaway group is doing. So still holding fairly consistently to one another. Matthew Ladd still holding strong on the front there. Our two Deutsches riders looking to hold on strong in that draft benefit from Matthew Ladd and looking to maybe put in a nice big attack as they climb through this climb that they're just about to enter. It looks like actually the Sportive side of the race is pushing further ahead and faster than the Pro side of the race today. But here we go, it looks like we're about to hit the foothills. And again, you can follow along both by looking at the downward facing golden arrow as we go through the elevation profile there on the bottom center of your screen, or by looking at the percentile number in the top right of your screen. So currently hitting 12%, which is certainly enough, more than enough, I would argue. And here we go, Daniel Kerdo as Aurelia looking to really push through this climb. But really surging ahead here is Ariala. So we're beginning to trough out here into a little bit of a plateau before we hit another pinchy climb. So we're at 3% right now, but we have quite a bit of climbing ahead and quite a bit of very strenuous climbing that's going to certainly stretch those chains to their limits and certainly going to test the quads of our riders today. Sven still holding strong on the front. And this is why you should never underestimate any rider on course. I had no idea that Ariella was such a strong rolleur, but here we go, really pushing through this climb, really taking that lead position. Matthew Ladd is unprepared to let go of that lead position, however. And Ludwig really pushing ahead. Luciano here giving a really pleasant and nice message of encouragement to Daniela. Or one of the, I don't know if that's Daniel or Daniela actually. Either way, giving a nice message of encouragement to one of the Dans on course today. But Ludwig there had really came from behind in that lead group and is now really pushed ahead. Again, we saw from previous races that he's certainly a powerful climber and certainly falls into that rolleur ability category. Yeah, it really does. And so if you're not familiar with racing, what Luciano is referring to here about the climbs testing the quads but also the brain is that it's going to take you to a dark place. That mental fortitude really comes to the front. You really get doubts come in when you start to see the rear wheels of riders who are behind you come ahead of you, and you get things that really want to ebb in with their dark messages and really make you give up. But then you have to really dig in deep and find the mental endurance as much as the physical. And it really does test that, and I can certainly attest to that through even recently with the Monday Malarkey race on this Monday gone, where that was almost entirely climbed, that whole course. And it's something that I'm sure Ben Russell right now can attest to as he's really pushing through this climb. And indeed, go on Ben, it's phenomenal watching Ben really surge ahead, and the breakaway he's managed to open is nothing short of impressive, and nothing short of impressive can also be applied as a moniker to Carl's chase effort. He really pushed ahead of that main chase group. He had to chase that chase group from a sizable distance behind, and now he's breezed past them and is now the main contender for chasing down Ben. That is phenomenal endurance that we've seen Carl put through the Crown Calms today, as he's really gripped on, I'm sure, to the hoods and really gritted those teeth and really pulling through that chain tension as he's doing certainly right now on 10% gradient. But still managing to hold 24 kmph on that climb, almost hitting 400 watts there in a fairly high cadence for such a pinchy and punchy climb, which tells me that Carl is doing something that, much like myself, he doesn't like doing. He's gone into the small chainring. I think we are both grinders, but he's in that small chainring and probably a sizable size cog on the cassette. I do feel sorry for my cassettes from time to time because I think I do wear out that front half of the cassette a lot faster than the back. And then outside, I wear out the middle a lot faster than both sides. Josh Harris here, leading that now tertiary chase group with Morten Feng and Igor. Igor catching up quickly and maybe looking to fire on ahead and catch up with Carl. And again, I love seeing the webcam. Igor looks like he's having a hell of a lot of fun, as well as finding a lot of painful moments, I'm sure, in such a pinchy climb. A grippy climb, if you will. Where it feels like you're no longer on road bike tyres, it feels like you're on mountain bike tyres in climbs like that. It feels like you're just sticking to the tarmac. Like the only wheel moving is your front wheel, even though you know, of course, your rear wheel is the main one moving, but it certainly feels like there's no movement behind you. Ben Russell now beginning to really fly down the descent, and we will see, I guess, if that climb really has changed anything. But we can see that Ludwig is actually further ahead in the Sportive side of the race than the Pro side of the race. He's opened up what appears to be a very sizable gap there. And I believe we might have missed something actually on the Sportive side of the race, and I apologise for that. But he's opened up a sizable gap, using the descent to his advantage, of course, and he's just out of the descent, or just about to leave that, as we go through the valleys of peaks and troughs, as we get into the final flat. Thank you, Christopher. It's been a privilege to bring this to you, and I speak on behalf of Damon as well from ZMS Esports Studio, the brains behind all of this and the talent behind the vision mixing and all the graphics you see on screen. So thank you for joining us and enjoying this race series with us, and thank you to everybody who has joined us and enjoyed it alongside us. So we're here with Daniel Kerr and the two ladies from Aeonian, looking to bridge that gap with both Sven and Ludwig ahead. And we've got Daniela there, beginning to really fly ahead, but Daniela is joined by Vicky Whitelaw, Ariella Verhaeren, Andrea Heinrich, Jamie Wright, Debbie Wimblet, Jennifer Mizak, and Berdine Driscoll, to form Aeonian race team. Matthew now beginning to surge ahead. He is the Canadian Comet. There you go. I've coined a nickname for you, Matthew. The Canadian Comet beginning to soar ahead. But instead of through the night sky, instead beginning to burn through that tarmac. But how is Carl getting on in that main chase position on the Pro side of the race? Is he managing to close that differential at all? And it looks like he's a minute 23 behind, so at least holding consistent, which has been amazing to see, because that time we saw of 1 minute 23 was before that climb. I'll just remind you of that. So that's with the climb and the descent. And he's still holding consistent at that distance between him and Ben Russell, so that is truly phenomenal. So that certainly proves the guile of the climbing ability of Carl. Holding at 42 kilometers per hour as we come into our final 11 kilometers remaining. Morten Feng leading now the tertiary chase group, if Carl does count as a chase group, being that that is one man. Josh Harris just slingshotted by. Igor Kopse chasing down, however. And they are managing to close that gap with Carl ahead. That dot that we can see soaring along the horizon is Carl. Josh is picking up some serious speed here, as are our other two contenders, including Igor, who we can see on screen here, breaking almost 400 watts, or just having broken 400 watts. So really giving some nice power through those crank arms, transferring through that chain. As we come into our final downhill of our little valley of peaks and troughs after that main climb. But things are changing on a dime on the Sportive side of the race. Let's take a look and make sure we haven't missed any major developments. So Matthew Ladd here leading our main group to chase down Ludwig, and if you can see that, you can just see the little yellow or flame colored jersey on the horizon of Ludwig ahead. So they're managing to close that gap He has just about to round that corner, as you can see there. That little speck there is Ludwig, and that speck is becoming bigger all the time as they close in. So you could argue that the Canadian Comet is coming in for a planetary impact with Ludwig ahead. Daniela here breaking 150, 200 watts, keeping nice and well paced, however. Perhaps beginning to hold something back. I think everyone's beginning to pace a little bit back. Likely as is Ludwig on the front there, ready for a finish line sprint. You do have to have at least a little tiny something left in the tank for that. Oh, my apologies. Not Ludwig ahead. It's actually Sven Teresa. So they're catching up here with Sven. My apologies. I forgot that Sven was in a chasse patate position. So Ludwig is likely still flying ahead, yet he has a lead of 40 seconds. With the distance remaining, it could be argued that this is his race today, with only 8.5 kilometers remaining and a distance of over, or a differential of over 30 seconds. We have a fork in the road here where riders can choose if they're going to take the higher road or the lower road, and that can be actuated by screen prompts that come in game, similar to a certain other virtual cycling platform that I won't name here, but you know the one. But that comes with the doubt of questions. If you're not familiar with, and if you haven't done a recce of this course, it might appear that you might be taking something that's a shortcut, but it could actually be longer. Or it might just be the fact that because you can no longer really keep an eye on your fellow contenders, that maybe you might fall into a false sense of security and might inadvertently begin to ease off on the crank arms and open up a bit of a gap. But Sven Teresa here is now being joined, so we're getting a grouping of a main chase group once again to try their best to tackle and take on Ludwig Kallberg. Matthew Ladd here, maybe having paid a little bit of a price for that decision to take the lower road there, has got maybe a little bit of a chase to push ahead. But if he can do it, he'll get that draft benefit, can maybe pace for a while, and then can really focus on collecting that heart rate after the chase and collecting the quads, or maybe massaging out the quads, if you will, after having put so much effort into said chase. But Matthew Ladd's effort throughout the Chase the Yellow Tour has been phenomenal. So that, again, as I say every time, there is no such thing as an effort out on course today that can be sniffed at. Everyone has put everything they can into the bike, left it all on the virtual tarmac. Ariala here pushing ahead in the main chase group. Looking at holding on with Daniela and Sven ahead. They're slowly eating away at that distance, that differential with Ludwig ahead, but there is only 6.5 kilometers remaining. Is that enough time? That question will linger for a little while, but I think as we get into the final few kilometers, I think it might be Ludwig's day. And we have that decision coming up for which side of the road to take on the pro side of the race. Josh Harris here being the only one, at least as far as I can see, to take the upper road, and everyone else has taken the lower. Again, it actually appears that the shortcut is the upper side, because the off-ramp to get onto this lower road is distance, and the on-ramp coming back in is also distance, and that's maybe the thing that everybody has forgotten with taking this lower side of the road. However, having said that, it looks like Igor Kopse has caught up with, by really surging ahead on that lower side of the road, caught up with Josh Harris. Maybe Josh was the one who got the full sense of security there by being left behind. Either way, they are now regrouped with Carl and with Morton as well. And what we're seeing here, this is not the finish line, this is the end of a section, or end of a timed section. So this will be for our relative flat here, leading us into the final section, which will ultimately finish with the finish line. Ben Russell 1 minute 34 ahead, still just soaring. And I believe with the distance we have left, it's pretty much appearing like it is Ben's day, barring any kind of technical issues, barring any issues like that come up that can maybe cause a little bit of a dropping off of speed or anything for Ben. It looks like it might actually be his day. But on the Sportive side, we've got Sven and we have Daniela in that main chase position, looking to catch up with Ludwig. They are slowly eating away at that time, but it is looking more and more likely that it is Ludwig's day as the distance counts on, the distance counts down and the time counts on. Just under 4.5k remaining. Our group here breaking 48 kmph, which is a phenomenal speed. Almost hitting 50 here, as we're just about to round 1 hour of cumulative time. And on the pro side of the race, Igor now has pushed ahead of our main chase group, being chased down himself by Josh as he's looking to ebb away at some of that time with Ben. Maybe at this point looking to get that second place position more than anything, looking to hold into the last with a good placement with 5.3k remaining and breaking 51 k's in speed here. And we've got our two Scandinavians looking to chase and to latch on to what is now our main chase group of Igor and Josh. So just under 5 kilometers per hour remaining, but the Sportive side of the race is wildly ahead. And we see Carl there in a place where he's certainly suffering right now as he latches into the hoods and really just punches through the crank arms. And Morten Feng pacing right now. Again, I think everybody's thinking more about placement right now than about Carl, because it does certainly appear like this is Carl's day right now. Igor looking at securing that second place position, but fellow teammate Josh is maybe thinking the same thing, so maybe team dynamics are beginning to be cast out the window right now. Ludwig there just still soaring, serenely unobstructed once again by other riders, breaking 43 kmph and still consistently holding around 45 seconds ahead of that main chase group, with only 2.5k remaining till that finish line. It looks like it certainly is Ludwig's day at this point. And speaking of Ludwig's flame-coloured kit, we will soon be casting the shadow of Ludwig's front wheel over the Flamme Rouge, because we're just 2k's remaining. The Flamme Rouge being the marker that denotes 1 kilometer remaining till the finish line. And Ludwig is with the team BL13. You can see that on the back of his jersey there. Great stuff. Ben Russell also unobstructed by the intrusion of other riders, if you will, as he continues to fly towards that finish line with Team Wahoo Lakal. So 2.9k remaining on the pro side of the race. And under 1.5 now on the sportive side. And on the horizon there, on the sportive side of the race, we can see the Flamme Rouge growing ever larger as we close in on it. And the thing I love in Indy Velo here is it's literally a red flame cast up by what looks like 2 roadside flares. You'll see them as we pass here and as we denote the final kilometer remaining. And it's almost poetic that the first rider to crack the Flamme Rouge is wearing a flame-coloured kit on a flame-coloured bike. So final half a kilometre remaining. Are we going to see a finish line sprint? If Ludwig even needs to do one, that is. I think Ludwig is just going to hold on through, give a nice endurance effort to the last. Because I think honestly at this point, maybe a sprint is not needed. 300 metres remaining to secure the win. Still holding strong, well over 300 watts. Beginning to ebb off now, knowing that the finish line is in sight and no challenge from behind. Therefore, snagging the win for Sweden. Ludwig Karlberg also being the first rider in both sides of the race, both pro and sportive, to cross that finish line. And final half a K now on the sportive side of the race for that main chase group. So I think we might see some very impressive finish line sprints coming up in the next maybe 100 meters or so. Ben Russell on the pro side of the race just about to cross the Flamme Rouge. And let's cut it over to the sportive because we're going to see some sprints. We're going to see them spring up out of the saddles into the drops and really just stand through those crank arms. And our 2 Ionians pushing way ahead. And Ariala here coming in for second place position. A very impressive finish line sprint, cracking over 600 watts. Fantastic stuff. The 2 Ionians claiming second and third, and the 2 BHC riders there from Deutschland claiming fourth and fifth. Ben Russell closing in on the final half a kilometre. And with more than 1 minute 15, he is, of course, well, more than 1 minute 15 differential to the next rider behind, I should add. He is, of course, going to be unchallenged from behind. And again, we'll be able to, at the most, just hold an endurance effort going forward, or in the least, maybe even begin to slow off a little bit and just cross over that finish line. So we've just had Ben cross that finish line, securing the win in the pro side of the race. And we have Tom Moss here on the Sportive side of the race, who is pulling the Tertiary chase group ahead, with Reinhold Berkey and Kai Retzel of White Fabric just behind, closing in here. As they close in on the final 2 kilometers remaining. Igor now pushing ahead, looking to hold on strong for that second place position. But even though a fellow teammate could be found in Josh, I think we're going to see a duking out of that position between the two. Here we go, a final finish line sprint. I think they've kind of been goading each other to see who would go first. And there's barely half a bicycle length in it, but it has been claimed by Josh, just about half a bicycle length ahead. But there's no shame in taking third at all. Morton taking the 4th place position, Carl 5th, and Rasmus here still has about 3 kilometers remaining, but closing in nice and strong on that finish line. But how are our contenders getting on the Sportive side? They're closing in on that Flamme Rouge, denoting the 1 kilometer remaining. Tom Moss here trying to hold in for a good position. But Kai Retzel and Reinhold Berkey are not going to let go. They're going to keep gripping on through those crank arms. Reinhold Berkey pushing ahead there. So cracking half a kilometer remaining. And here we get those finish line sprints. Looks like Kai Retzel pushing ahead. Reinhold Berkey, fellow teammate, just behind, but Tom Moss is beginning to fly here. Is Kai Retzel going to be able to hold him off? Oh, this is going to be a tough one to call. Oh, Kai Retzel just gets it. Rob Halsall, who began the Chase the Yellow Tour on Indy Velo in the top position, now coming in towards that finish line with just about 700 meters remaining. Rasmus Felbauer here, he is sub 2Ks remaining and closing in on that finish line. Alright, and today we have taken on a phenomenal course, the longest course available on Indy Velo, and that is the crossover circuit, where we began on that west coast, coming through the centre, and then looping up north and coming down the east coast, back through the west, to that finish line that just lies ahead of Kenneth Richardson here, as he begins to fly in and close in on that finish line. Rasmus just about to cross the Flamme Rouge. So Rasmus closing in on the final 300 meters. And I'm sure this will feel like a well-deserved rest as he gets to cross that finish line, gets to unclip and step down off the saddle. And appearing like a shining beacon from the horizon, the finish line. Well done, Rasmus. And we've got Michael Fretti here, who we began following at the start of the race, closing in on that finish line. With only 2Ks remaining. All right, and how does our top 10 look? Bearing in mind that this is cursory results for only this time slot of the race. We have had 2 prior time slots, and if you wish to view all of our results, just follow our Facebook page, Chase the Yellow, for the results from today once they are all aggregated down from all 3 time slots. So cursory results only for this time slot race. Ludwig Karlberg has very much claimed the top spot with a cumulative time from start line to finish line 1 hour 5 minutes and 5 seconds. Ariela Verhaeren is 58 seconds behind, and Daniela Estrada is 800th of a second behind Ariela. Sven Drezer is 1 minute 2 seconds behind Ludwig. And rounding out the top 5, Daniel Kerder, 1 minute and 2 seconds behind Ludwig. And for the top 5 from the pro side of the race, there are only 5 this time, but Ben Russell claimed that top spot with that phenomenal gap that he had opened up, that phenomenal breakaway. 1 hour 7 minutes and 10 seconds. Josh Harris is 1 minute 29 seconds behind to take the second place position for Australia. For Slovenia, Igor Kopse is 1 minute 29, about 100th of a second behind Josh. And then we have Morten Fang, who was 1 minute 40 seconds behind Ben Russell. Also 1 minute 40 seconds, but about 200th of a second behind Morten, is fellow Scandinavian Carl Axel Zander Persen. And Rasmus Feldbauer, rounding out the top 5, was 6 minutes 34 behind the UK's Russell for E-Cycle Club Denmark. And we do have the Keirin event coming up, Chase the Pace, and that will be right here on Indy Velo and broadcast right here on ZMS Esports Studio. So join us for that. And again, I covered it earlier, but it is the Japanese race event, Japanese truck event called Keirin. All right, well, it's been a pleasure to bring this to you today. It's been a pleasure to host the Chase the Yellow Tour right here on Indy Velo, and I really hope you've enjoyed it. And I should wrap up by saying I hope you have a wonderful day. My name has been Mark, and you've been a wonderful audience. Take care.